Greetings, denizens of the night, and welcome to Fangs After Dark. Tonight I wanted to bring up a candid discussion about the differing editions of Vampire the Masquerade, something that all of us can really sink our teeth into, as this topic of discussion is quite divisive amongst the Vampire the Masquerade community as a whole. Everyone has their own opinions and their own preferences, and I just kind of wanted to talk about what I thought about the entire thing. So, let's dig right in. Initially, Vampire the Masquerade was released its first edition in 1991, with second edition coming just a year later in 1992. Second edition was less of a new game and more of just an updating of rules, adding new things such as conditions, status effects, tidying up rules for different creatures that vampires may interact with, like ghosts and specters. And then in 1998, third edition would come out, which would have a more enhanced rule set, and that would be the last edition of Vampire the Masquerade that would be supported, so to speak, until 2011, in which they came out with Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary Edition. By this point, Vampire the Masquerade game line had already been stopped, so to speak. They had come out with the Gehenna line chronicle books that detailed the end of the vampiric world, and they did not really support Vampire the Masquerade with a whole lot of content until they did with the 20th Anniversary Edition due to popular demand. People really loved the meta lore for Vampire the Masquerade, the stories, the characters. They really were engaging with it, and they decided to release the 20th Anniversary. And they also did this with Mage the Ascension and Werewolf the Apocalypse as well. They also received 20th Anniversary editions. Vampire the Masquerade would not get any other books support-wise until 2018, in which Vampire 5th Edition was released. And it was monikered as 5th Edition because technically it was the 5th iteration of Vampire the Masquerade. You'd had 1st Edition, 2nd Edition, 3rd edition, which was considered revised. It was known as Vampire the Masquerade Revised. It wasn't actually known as 3rd, but it was the 3rd edition of the game. Then you had the 20th Anniversary, which was an updated rule set to the revised. It had a lot of updated rules to it and added things. That was technically the 4th iteration of Vampire the Masquerade. And then you had 5th edition that was released in 2018, which is why it's referred to as V5. So what do I think about these different editions? Well, like with any game system, and I know most of you probably aren't going to like this answer because people really like it when you pick a side of the fence to stand on. I am very much in the middle because I feel like you can play any edition of any of these systems that you want for whatever purposes you may need. They are good for their own things. The two biggest differences that I see are mostly from Vampire the Masquerade 20th Anniversary and 5th Edition. The older editions, I think, are kind of obscured more since 20th Anniversary kind of took a lot of the older editions, mashed them up together, and it created this very large, solid system to a point. And a lot of people play 20th Edition. They really like 20th Edition, or 20th Anniversary Edition, I should say. And a lot of people are liking V5 as well. And there are aspects to both that I really enjoy. And I have played 20th Anniversary Edition quite a lot. I've played Revised a decent amount. I have not ever actually just played base 1st or 2nd Edition, admittedly, but I have played Revised, I've played 20th Anniversary, and I've played a lot of V5. And I've also played a lot of LARP. As a matter of fact, LARPing was my first foray into Vampire the Masquerade in general. It was the first time I was ever introduced to this World of Darkness, was through LARP. I've also played a lot of Chronicles of Darkness, which is an entirely different game line that I can get into later. But what do I think about the different editions? Overall, like I said, I think it just depends on what you want. I feel personally that the 20th Anniversary Edition is a lot more granular with a lot of its mechanics. You can really get down to the nitty-gritty on different actions and certain things. The discipline powers were a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? They had a lot more foundation to them. There was a lot of discipline powers you can pick from. The biggest difference between V5 and V20 when it comes to disciplines is the fact that there are elder level disciplines in V20. There are all sorts of, specific things you can do. Thaumaturgy was very, very codified in its paths. Same with necromancy. Obtenebration wasn't treated like it was a path of magical power. It was treated like its own just singular discipline with its own very specific power sets to it. And V5 is a lot less like that, but V5 is also more, it's newer. So it's not quite as codified. There isn't as much stuff, but they have taken a different turn with how they want to approach the game. V20 allowed you to play anything from a fledgling all the way to a Methuselah if you wanted to. There was codified rules all the way down to the discipline powers you could have in place for that. But in V5 is designed more for the younger vampire, the personal horror of being a younger vampire. It's designed more for that street level play, which is fine. And with any system, you can always adapt it to do whatever you want, because that level of creativity is always encouraged. But at the end of the day, you play what you want to play with the players that you want to play with. Personally, I do like the granularity of V20 quite a bit. I like the ability, I like having the foundation there that I can go back to, because from my opinion, if you're playing a game, there should be a foundational rule system to follow for that game. If you're not following the rules, or if you're throwing the rules to the wayside constantly, you're not really playing a game, you're just telling a story with your friends around a table, which is fine. But from my perspective, if you are going to play a game, you need to have rules to follow for the game. And V20 has a lot of rules that you can follow, and like I said, you can cherry pick which ones you want, what you don't want. V5 focuses a lot more on the narrative aspect of things. There are a lot of rules in V5 that really, they help push the narrative more than just having some sort of rule set to help you determine an outcome of something, if you know what I mean. The biggest thing about V5 that I personally think was a very, very good move is the hunger system. In V20, it was blood pools, or it was a pool of blood points you would spend. And very, very often I noticed that vampire blood pools were just treated as a sort of superpower meter that you would just have to fill up at certain points to be able to have the ability to use your disciplines, your vampiric superpowers. And the nature of vampirism was kind of set out to the wayside because of the granular nature of the blood pool and how the powers worked, and you got to spend so many blood points and things of that nature. And like I said, depending on what table you're sitting at, depending on the players you have, the ST you have, I'm not saying that you can't run very, vampire curse heavy style narratives in V20, because you absolutely can. It's just the rules tended to not support that level of storytelling intuitively. In V5, that is a little different, because your vampires don't have blood pools anymore. They have hunger ratings, and the hunger rating directly ties into every die pool you have, and it can directly affect the actions that your character takes. If you do something and you're super hungry, you can do things that you might not want to do because the beast takes hold. A lot of people might say, well, I don't like the idea of my character losing agency. I don't like the idea that I have to do something that I don't necessarily want to do because of the mechanics. But from my perspective, that is the curse of vampirism, and that mechanic really pushes the vampire curse narrative in the stories. It comes a lot more into the forefront. Hunting becomes a lot more important, because now you have to hunt. Are you going to be able to hunt successfully to get your hunger down? Your hunger could actually affect your hunt and make that turn into a situation. Getting your hunger down to complete 0 has moral ramifications to it when it comes to the stains and the humanity. So you have to constantly weigh those things. And like I said, it's not that you can't do this with V20, it's just V5 has an inherent intuitive system that helps support that style of storytelling, which I appreciate. I like it when RPG games have rules that push the style of narrative that the game is designed to have. V20, you can push whatever narrative you wanted to, but it was very granular, and in my opinion, very granular systems can really bog down the gameplay, can bog down the story if you're trying to stick to the rules to the letter, which a lot of people like to do because they are playing a game. And like I said, I don't fault them for that. It's just one of the pitfalls of V20, but I still think V20 is a good system. And I think V5 itself is a pretty good system as well. It's pretty fun to play, and the best fun that you're going to have obviously is going to come less from the system you're playing and more from the table that you're with and the storyteller you have running your games. And right now, I probably would have to say that I enjoy V5 more than V20, but part of that is because a lot of the people around me play V5, or they play Requiem, Chronicles of Darkness, which that system is also a very good system in its own right. You can tell that V5 took a lot of inspiration from the Chronicles Vampire the Requiem system, because it is a good system, and I feel like it helped Vampire the Masquerade grow a little more when it came to a game system in itself. Are there things that can be done better? Absolutely. I don't necessarily agree with the fact that blood sorcery was changed as much as it was, even though there is a compelling story lore reason for it. I still don't think that they should have completely jabberwocked the entire thaumaturgy system, in my opinion. I understand why they combined obtenebration and necromancy together, but I still think those two should have been completely separate because they were just so distinct. And yeah, there are things about V5 that I don't necessarily agree with either, that I personally would change. And there are certain things that I do house rule in my games when I run, V5. Like in the older systems, you can drop your humanity to gain some XP. You can take extra flaws for XP. I allow the same thing. Certain things that, I house rule, like when you play a caitiff, it says that you can just pick whatever disciplines. I don't do that. I have them roll for the disciplines to see what they get, and I remove access to very specific kinds of discipline. Like a caitiff can't just have blood sorcery all of a sudden, or oblivion. It's usually what I consider the nine basic disciplines, which if you are a vampire veteran, you'll know what those 9 are, which I'll probably go into in a future video as well. But like I said, and I know this is a bit of a rambling video, everything might seem incoherent, and I'm sorry if it was hard to follow, but at the end of the day, my thoughts are V20, good. V5, good. Older editions, good. Chronicles of Darkness, good, because it all depends on your preference and what you want to do, and the fact that you have the freedom to cherry pick and do whatever the hell you want at your table. If you like a certain elder power for V5 from V20, then take it and turn it into a power for V5. And I've done things like that before. I think, the amalgam system is actually pretty interesting. There's a lot of good stuff you can do. V20 is definitely a lot more foundational, and there's a lot more there that an ST can work with for sure. V5 still has a ways to go to be as foundational, but I think it's got some really good bones to it, and they're starting to add a little bit more flesh to those bones, if you know what I mean. And I only hope that they keep growing and getting better. The new Gehenna War book is coming out in August, and I hope that they add some more content in there for older vampires, older kindred, because even though Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition is kind of designed for the younger vampire, you just cannot ignore the fact that elders exist, Methuselahs exist, and just old ass vampires exist. That's part of the point of being a vampire, is you get super fucking old. And I think it's a mistake if they try to just completely eliminate that factor of that world from the mechanics of the new edition. It would behoove them to add something something more concrete than just, the things for blood potency, because blood potency stuff does exist for older vampires, but there needs to be more. And they need to come out with more lore books, because people really like Masquerade for the meta lore. And so far, they've been taking this kind of like hybrid approach of this is what's going on, so it leaves this much openness to it that you can mess around with at your leisure. But I think they need to have some more codified stuff, because I think that's what people are expecting as a fan base. So those are my thoughts. Take it or leave it. I just kind of wanted to get these thoughts out there because they've been bouncing around my head for a while, and I felt like I needed to express them. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Which edition's your favorite? What aspects of each edition do you like? Just have a discussion. Let me know. I'd be interested to interact and see what's going on. So like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate the support. And I'll see you guys at the next video real soon. And remember, nothing good ever happens after dark.